you're the director. What was the stimulus for you to take this huge leap and to live Color It more fully?
Okay, for us, we have 3 long-term care homes, 3 very distinctive communities. The largest home is home to 150 residents, while the smallest is 66 residents. And we really knew that our mission, which was Color It Your Way, needed to be lived more consistently. It's one thing to create something and put it on the wall and say, yeah, that's a good one. And another thing to actually step outside and say, we're doing it and we're comfortable with that.
And the reason that we're here today is because it was an opportunity, because leadership of such a big thing in terms of really deeply connecting to your mission with so many people, so many organizations, can be a big exhausting. And sometimes you lose a sense of where you're going and where you've been. So in Lynne and I sitting down to prepare, it was really our chance to celebrate all the hard work and to maybe inspire ourselves, re-inspire ourselves again. And what we noticed when we did that is that there are 3 things that we noticed about our work. And we don't call it culture change, we call it living our mission more deeply. And so, although it says culture change up there because it's a culture change conference. So, but there are 3 big lessons that we've learned in this 3-year journey. One is to ditch our fear and to live large and dream large. And then to engage everyone in a clear vision of the destination and to invest in leadership across the organization. And those are the 3 things that we're going to share a little bit of detail in terms of Lynne's actions to do just that. So let's talk about ditch the fear and dream large.
Okay. One of the things that we really knew is working together, we would have more resources, we could share more resources, and we had a bigger team in order to bounce ideas off. And that was really important to us in the beginning. So there were fears. Right away you think culture change, you think anything that's going to add to your workload, you're afraid of it. And that was a big one. No time, too large, too hard, what if we fail? You know, all the typical things we've all felt. So I had to kind of get my own fears under control as the leader to be able to move ahead. One thing I knew, we had to ensure that we needed to recognize the significant attachment that each home had to their own culture, what happens within their walls. And it's really difficult when you're looking at it from a corporate standpoint. How do we incorporate all those uniqueness, but yet still achieve what our mission is? I needed to recognize the fear and respect the individuality of each of those homes, each of the leaders. Everybody was proud in their own way of things they were doing, but we were really disjointed. We had a lot of good resources. That was a really nice starting point. We had policies. You know, we didn't always live up to them. We heard that this morning. You have a lot of policies, and it's really hard to do that, but we had good policies. We had good leadership in place, and that was important. It makes a good starting point. We had educational budgets. We had a lot of resources. We just had to use them more effectively. I think the big thing was drawing the line in the sand and stepping forward and saying, we're going to do it. That was, you know, it's as simple as it is. It was a big step, and it was probably a defining moment in the whole process. I was going to say, I just have a note here. For me, as a senior leader, coaching at that point was so valuable for myself, to be able to give me the little prod. And I always say that to Pat, you know, she's the voice of reason. You know, if I start to waver, if I wasn't quite sure we were heading the right place, it was grounding and making sure I understood really what my vision was and what it was we needed to do in order to move our homes ahead to a place that we could all be proud of.
And so we really noticed, all of these kinds of things in terms of really recognizing that this was big, and to work together, all of us, to say, what are the resources? How do we focus them to help us do what we want to do? So what happened?
Well, where do we have here? Our big dot, engaging everybody in a clear vision. This was really critical to our work. As human beings, we have to have tangible goals, and I'll let Pat talk about some of the starting steps that we had to get this off the ground.
We knew as leaders that we had to make the end point, the goal, really clear to everyone. So we had meetings with the leadership team where we really talked about Color It And what did color it really mean? And we met with, I had 4-hour sessions with every single employee of every long-term care home in Grey County, in the county homes. And in each of those sessions, using a crazy quilt as a metaphor, we had the staff really talk from their perspective. What did Color It Your Way mean to them? Those were incredible sessions. They were powerful, and people really got what our Color It mission meant. And that was a huge investment. And it was a huge, as Lynn said, drawing a line in the sand to say, we're going here, so let's figure it out. We actually didn't know how. Much like Martin Luther King, when he said, I have a dream, we then went to the experts and said, how? How do we achieve the dream? And so that was really important. And with the leaders, many sessions to talk about what does Color It from a leadership perspective look like? What does it sound like? What does it react like if we're going to live Color It? And so that was really, really important. And that took a lot of time and investment in just having the patience to get everybody clear on the destination. And we felt that that was really, really important. And it had, as we did that, it had huge feedback from staff. We started to hear all sorts of great things about Color It, and people embraced it.
And when Pat talks about all the staff, there was 450 staff that we had to arrange to bring small groups together to sit around and talk about. And some of the staff were quick to take on the whole idea of Color It. You know, it's kind of one of those visions out there. What does Color It mean to you? The other piece that we really took great pride and took a lot of effort to do was meeting with our residents and our families. We engaged them in drawings, storytelling, all sorts of things. What did it mean to the residents that lived with us and the families that were entrusting their loved ones' care to us? And so we got their feedback on it as well. And that was really important. The other piece we started to do is seek out stories, because storytelling is such a powerful thing, and it can be used to demonstrate successes. It could be used to debrief on things that didn't go so well. And we started to really encourage how the stories were unfolding, and use them and share them and collect them, because it's part of what we heard earlier today. What are the things we struggled with was the gratitude, giving praise and giving thanks, and we looked at storytelling as an opportunity to do that. One of the other things is in this bubble here. Do not assume that people truly understand what you're trying to achieve or mean by culture change. Everybody needs to understand it from where they sit. And that is something that I'm really proud that we took the time early in the process to walk back through it if people weren't with us.
And I said, I don't know whether you're familiar, we live in a rural area of crazy quilts, but crazy quilts are quilts that are unusually put together. There isn't a pattern, and they're often made as a gift. And there's knots tied in them. And I actually didn't know what the knots were for. And early on, in using the quilt as a metaphor, one of the staff said, you tie a prayer and you tie love into each knot that you put in the quilt, because they're given as wedding gifts, as gifts to heal people. And it was incredible as we repeated that story, how the heart of the organization really started to open to this notion of coloring it. So and then we could tell that story, and because it really spoke to the heart of what we were about. Then we developed, to be very concrete, as the previous speakers talked about, our standards. So we developed Color It standards. In many, many, many focus groups, we came up with the words that meant Color It to us as an organization.
And the other piece that we did with our standards is we were able to develop that further. What does community mean to you? And that's where we used the words of the people that we worked with, the people that lived with us, and that type of thing, to really pull that piece out for them. And that was pretty defining in our first year. We had residents, family, staff, everybody that would talk to us participate in that piece.
And so, Lynn, was it all smooth sailing?
Sure. And if you believe me, I've got some property for sale. Yes, actually, as we moved through the process, staff, residents, families got more and more engaged. What we found as we were moving into year 2 is staff were pretty quick to start bringing things forward, things that didn't feel right, things that they thought just didn't meet the mark of Color It. It could be interactions with their co-workers, it could be managers, it could be families, it could be anything. You name it, it came forward. was a little overwhelming at times, and that probably would have been a really good time to say, can't do it. This is just too much for me. But we moved on, we carried on. We had lots of CIs, we had lots of investigations, we had lots of opportunities for coaching.
Front page of the newspaper.
It wasn't all happy times, but you know, it really helped us gather our strength. What I found is the leadership teams in all 3 homes really learned to grow and lean on each other through that time, which to me, that was really, really important. It strengthened our organization. And through that time, we reevaluated policies, we reevaluated things, and I believe we came out a lot stronger and a lot better at the end of the day.
And we also praised our staff, because what they were telling us by reporting what they saw is they got Color It, and they were proud of us. And that was hard when you're on the front page of the newspaper for, you know, critical investigations, police involved, all these kinds of things. But for leaders, I mean, that's where you stand up, right? And you don't give up, and you say, this represents us saying that this change is important, and we're proud of you for doing that. And we had to take action. And we had to take action and show them that they could trust in us, that we weren't just, you know, blowing sunshine, that this is really what we wanted. So then more things happened.
Well, year 2 was an interesting year. Things started to really gel for us, come together. And when I really recognized that the residents and families were getting Color It was a family meeting I was at. And probably a lot of people have dealt with situations where you have a resident with responsive behaviors that loves to wander into that one room at the end of the hall and sleep on the bed and use the washroom and all those great things, and the person who lives in that room doesn't particularly appreciate it. And at the home, staff did all the right things for that resident. And I mean the resident who had the behaviors that were impacting the other person. And, you know, we talk about patience, redirecting, put things in place, and they were working pretty good. And it was interesting, a family meeting I went to, when the family looked at me and said, Lynn, can you tell me how that is coloring it for my mother, who lives in that room 7 days a week, 24 hours a day? Wow. Talk about sitting back and thinking, she gets it, why didn't we? So it really made us look at all residents in a different way. Rather than dealing with the situation at hand and responding to that situation, it made us really look and say, what is that bigger impact? And to me, in year 2, that was a pretty exciting time, and we were able to manage it.
And I think the thing that really is cool is that within Grey County, there are many departments. The Grey County mission is Color It Your Way. Lynne's ability and her team's ability was so strongly recognized that other departments started to say, oh, well then how do we color it? And started using the mission. And so long-term care was seen as an incredible leader in the county in terms of living this mission statement, which a lot of people weren't sure what it meant and began to define it for themselves. So it was really long-term care demonstrating powerful leadership in the county itself. And that wasn't always maybe how people thought of long-term care. So it really was a shift in how people looked at us.
It was pretty exciting in that time, too, when we spoke about IT earlier. And an example there was the IT department came forward to me one day, and Brian, you'd have to know, a very special, quiet-spoken young man, and he said, I've got an idea. And I said, what's your idea, Brian? And he showed me. And he developed screensavers that had the Color It, that he loaded on every single computer in the homes, the desktops, the kiosks, everything. So when they're locked, it scrolls through the Color It standards. And he was so excited by that. And I thought, isn't that something that we were able to spread that virus to him in such a good way? And it really connected him to our homes. And he's our go-to guy. You know, if a resident phone isn't hooked up quite quick enough, you know, he's pretty quick to say, okay, I can color that. I can deal with it. And it's really quite rewarding.
Yes, and you can imagine Brian the geek being so excited. And that's what really connecting, that's why we call it connecting to Color It. It's really, he's solution finding for us, yeah. And then one of our homes won the OLTCA Culture Change Award. That was the home on the front page of the newspaper. And they hung in there. And that administrator is the youngest administrator. And I thought she was going to expire a few times. And she hung in there. She has tremendous courage. And that's where, as Lynne said, everybody pulled together. And Lynne, as her senior director, helped her really hang in when times got really tough and see that she was on the right path.
So
Then
year
three.
Year three. So now we're in our third year of the journey, and we've developed it a little bit further. We're starting to use it more. We've integrated into our quality improvement plans. When we look at how we're doing things in our policies, if we have a policy, what does that reflect? It could be organizational quality and safety. You know, what is that? And really using those words every day and living them and breathing them. That is a big thing. The other piece is continuing to use the stories, keep them alive, and sharing them. And for me, patience has been the toughest point all along this journey. I'm not necessarily a patient person that likes to think about it and someday it will happen. If it's an idea, let's do it today. So for me, it's been a really tough thing. Each home had their own approach to it, and each of the 3 homes all proceeded at a slightly different pace. There were times that we had to put the stake back in the ground and say, come on, this is where we need to be. But then stepping back and allowing them the chance to grow and figure out what works good within their home and for their team and how they needed to approach it. The other piece that we did in there is a lot of our education. And we developed educational modules that would meet the needs of the specific home. And some of the ones we did leadership, color it leadership,
Team.
color it team, and color it became the metaphor that we used with whatever was developed and put out for the staff as part of a teaching moment.
And instead of developing our policies on abuse, which is an unusual thing that anyone would do and be asked to do, but we are asked in long-term care, is we color it respect. That's what we call it. How do we color it respect in our homes? And that's what our policy on abuse and harassment is called now. It's called our color it respect. And I think that that's the thing that we're now living, is that color it is our goal as an organization. It includes, of course, that we would meet the Ministry of Health standards, that we would meet the Ministry of Labor standards. We would incorporate all of those, but they're not our target. Having, 4 indicators indicate the quality of our home. No, this is the quality of our home, and we're beginning to say, how do we measure that? So that we can really say that color it is our standard.
So one of the things that I'm really proud that we did throughout the journey was invest in our leadership. And what does that look like? Well, we felt that creating effective relationships was really important to creating strong teams. We needed everyone to be present in the conversations, to hear, be part of it, not dictating, but listening. Each leader needed to have the courage to step forward and hold everyone accountable for whatever that standard was. It didn't matter if that's that one staff member or that one family member, or whatever that situation is you tend to want to avoid. We had to have the courage to step forward. The leadership teams recognized that they really needed support to be able to grow and handle that challenge that was set out for them. So to start for us, we had to build the relationship between each individual team. So number 1 was that larger leadership team and growing their strengths. And you don't have to leave work and want to be everybody's best friend, but you definitely need to be able to work well together when you're in the workplace. The second thing we wanted to make sure is, because we were looking for organizational change, we needed to touch everyone in the organization. So we looked at our registered staff. We created dyads, triads, individual coaching between departments, between singular groups of people. Anybody within the organization that wanted coaching were allowed to have coaching. It was just out there for them. There are a few people that we really had to encourage to seek out coaching. And, sometimes it worked for them, sometimes it didn't, but that's okay, because it was our culture that we needed them to work the way we envisioned the world to be able to provide the best care for the people who were living with us, for them to have fulsome and rewarding lives.
And for many of you, you'd understand the courage it took for Lynne to invest in to invest in something called coaching, and to say that we're all really great professionals, but maybe leadership isn't something that we studied or understand. And not just sending them to a course, but saying in the moment, And so it's been a privilege for me. And in the homes, I'm there at least twice a month, and I'm available on email for leaders to talk about leadership relationship issues. And that's been a remarkable journey for me and also for them. And staff who are having trouble with the model, frontline leaders having trouble with how to be a leader. We can't just ask them to be it or tell them they're not a good leader. They don't know how to do it. They want to do it, they just don't know how. So what's next, Lynn?
Well, it can be a little bit overwhelming at times, to say the least, but it is very invigorating. And despite the fears, challenges, hesitation, we're persevering. You know, we're 3 years in, and, you know, over the next 20 years, I'm sure we'll be able to really see a lot more victories and successes and learnings. I'm really proud of our team. Their dedication, their commitment, them believing in the process, you know, and putting the fears away. I think they've done a great job there, and I'm really confident that our efforts are moving towards where we need to be to provide care for the residents today and what we need for the future. So I think it's great. We're going to continue on the path.
So just a reminder of our 3 recommendations is ditch your fears and dream large. And Lynn said that was one of the very first conversations we had. Go big or go home. If you're not in it for love, forget it. Go big. And you will be afraid. Don't expect to not be afraid. Really scary things happened. And we together figured it out. Then engage everyone. I can't emphasize that enough, what a difference it's made. When you hear PSWs talking about how do we color it for this resident instead of there for the BSO, they're talking about how to color it for this resident. That's a powerful moment for all of us. And then investing in leadership. Often there's this belief that people will be leaders because they have the title on the door. And that simply is not true. And if we want people to be leaders, we need to invest in them and to call them forth and to give them the skills and the resources to do that. And so we too say that this is what we've done. Color It really has asked us to be the change that we want to see. And I'm really proud to work with somebody like Lynn who's got courage and big girl pants by the drawerful.
That was fantastic. Thank you so much. Does anybody have? We're going to open it up for questions. We have a little bit of time for discussion. Perfect. Al's going to kick us off.
Sure, yeah, great presentation. They've all been great presentations. Just more a comment than a question to really amplify something you said that's so important, and that is a lot of people use culture change as a scapegoat. They think, oh, it means we can do whatever we want. And culture change, when done right, raises the bar of accountability for everybody. It doesn't lower the bar. And I think one of the keys, and probably Veronique will speak about this later too, one of the keys is you're moving accountability from being accountable to your bosses to being accountable to your peers and to your residents and to your families. And when you do that, then you have to, and then when you saw that when people were saying so-and-so is not living up to our standards, because people are taking charge. And you no longer just have to, please your boss who doesn't see you most of the day. You have to please the people who are by your side. And that's a whole different world. It really does, it makes accountability much stronger, but it keeps the values at the center. So thanks for that.
And I think it's the accountability to the mission. And we're all required, it's amazing, in the legislation there's a really good thing that says we all have to have a mission statement. And often we don't even know what the heck it is. People can't tell me what their mission statement is. And even if they can, they don't relate it to their work. You need everyone in your organization to be accountable to that mission. And that allows them to be creative, innovative, courageous. That just doing that, when we made Color It and we said this is what it means, we gave permission for people to be the best they could be. And they didn't need a policy. They knew that if the resident didn't like lunch, that their job was to color it for them in a safe way and a collaborative way, building a sense of community. They knew all that, and so they acted, rather than saying we can't do that. Yeah, so thank you. Carrie?
Thanks, Pat and Lynn's fantastic presentation. So I'm curious about what reactions you might have received so far from the ministry. and how they're perceiving, some of the work and some of the changes you've been doing, and if you see any potential for shifting on that perspective.
What we're seeing is staff comfort level during ministry inspections. I think that's one of the things that I could say, it used to be, here comes the ministry, right? And everybody's in a panic. Now look, we've given the permission, staff permission, to be able to say, whatever the resident wants, as long as it's safe, as long as it's, reasonable, that's okay. We'll support you in that. But it has to kind of fit in there that you can justify it. It's not just a free-for-all. So staff are really comfortable in explaining why they did it. They don't have the feeling that I'm going to get in trouble because I did something. You can ask why this might have went off the rails, and we've been able to give them that support. So as far as swaying the ministry, that's maybe a little tougher piece.
And I would say that it really isn't our job to impact the ministry. They have a job to do. They're the police of long-term care, and they're the enforcers. I can't persuade a police officer when I'm driving. I live in Grey County. We do a lot of driving. That driving 120 on a county road is a good idea. He should be able to say to me, that's not safe, or I'd rather you do it this way. That's their job. I think the switch for us, as Lynne has said, is we decided what we were going to do, that met all the standards, was within the legislation, and we said these are the indicators that we're going to look at as quality. They are one monitor of how well we're doing. They're not the whole story. And so I think it's just shifting the role we place for the ministry in our lives. Not that they're not important. We all need that safety and security. They are the monitors of the legislation. The legislation is for our residents. We've shifted how we think about their role in our organization.